Good afternoon and welcome to the 2020 Denver Conversation on Board Diversity. I'm Mimi Calnan. I am the Mercer Mountain States office leader, and I am one of the co-chairs for the second year in a row of this important initiative, 2020 Women on Boards. This year, I am honored to have not one, but three co-chairs that I have worked with to bring this to all of you today. So I'm going to hand it to my co-chairs to introduce themselves.
Good afternoon, Paula Hendrickson, and this is my second year co-chairing with my dear friend Mimi. And we're so thrilled to have you guys virtually, and it took 4 of us to get it done.
Thanks, Paula, and good afternoon to everybody. So excited to have you here. My name's Taylor Plus, and I am the West Coast Retirement Director at Janus Henderson. And I also co-chair the local Colorado chapter of Women in Pension Network.
Hi, I'm JoLynn Whiting. I'm chair of Board Bound by Women's Leadership Foundation. And we've been working since 2011 to open more board positions for women in Colorado and beyond. And we're quite excited you're here with us today to celebrate because we made it. It's 20% women-owned Colorado boards as of June 2020. So great time. And the other reason we're very glad you're with us today is to meet 2 of the leaders of our global organization. Betsy Berghammer-Creder, the CEO, and later in the program, Stephanie Sonnenbrun, the co-founder. So Betsy has been the CEO of 2020 Women on Boards for a couple of years. She is an author of 2 great books about women on boards and also an entrepreneur, starting a public relations company and an executive search firm. So Betsy, will you please join us now?
Well, I can't wait, JoLynn, and I want to thank Taylor and Paula and Mimi and JoLynn for all the work that you have put in to bring the Denver 2020 Women on Boards, the conversation on board diversity to reality again this year. Really appreciate all your efforts. And we at 2020 Women on Boards, which is now the leading global campaign to advance women to public company boards. We could not do this without you, and we are in the middle of 28 cities, what do I call a virtual tour that we're enjoying throughout the US and 4 international capitals. In fact, we were doing Spain this morning and the UK last week, and we're also in Zurich and in Mexico City, which we did yesterday. But we're here in Denver and just so pleased to give you an update on what's happening. You're going to see slides, all of you in the audience, a little bit later about the national success and soon to be global success that we've been having as 2020 Women on Boards. The organization was founded 10 years ago. So we're celebrating our 10th anniversary, just like the Colorado Women's Leadership Foundation and JoLynn's great creation. And we also are celebrating the 100th anniversary of women's right to vote, as you all know, which is so critically important. So the organization was founded by Stephanie and by Mally Giro, and we would not be here if it were not for their vision and their drive all these years to go from what was 10% women on corporate boards in the Russell 3000 back in 2010, way back in 2010, to what this year is 22.6% in the Russell 3000 board seats held by women. Quite an accomplishment. And we also we kicked off our 28 city and state tour, city, state, and country tour with our first ever global broadcast. And it was the global broadcast about global board diversity on November 12th. And we had nearly 6,000 of all of our registrants attending the global broadcast, and which was headlined by Melinda Gates and Melody Hobson and Valerie Jarrett, and about 21 speakers from around the globe talking about the status of women on boards, which is a huge issue now, a huge business issue. And what timing for the NASDAQ to come out yesterday. I think it was because we're doing all of our 28 city and state events right now, but NASDAQ came out yesterday proposing to the SEC, you've probably heard this because it was on the news all day yesterday, proposing that the SEC require its member companies and other corporations to have at least one woman and a person of a diverse minority on corporate boards. And that's a huge statement, 800-pound gorilla type kind of statement in support of what we all have been working on for the last 10 years. And we give a big shout out to NASDAQ for doing that right in the middle of our events, which we thank them very much. We didn't pay them to do that, but they just darn good luck. And then today you are going to redefine and practice with the wonderful contribution of time and wisdom of the director coaches in your breakout sessions and the panelists you're going to hear. You're going to redefine your attack on networking in order to position yourselves for potential board seats. And it does take the homework on the part of us women to position ourselves and be prepared to be talking about ourselves in a way that people will remember us as potential candidates. And I want to close with how very proud we are of the California law SB 826, which I'm pleased to say was something I was very much involved with, initiating the whole idea way back in 2013. And in fact, we just did our Sacramento 2020 Women on Boards event today. But I mention this because the requirements of SB 826, as you probably know, were one woman on every public company board in California last year, which led to the result of 200 women getting on board seats last year. And then before the next deadline is before the end of 2021. When a minimum of 3 women on every California corporate board publicly held are required. And that means that California is very close to Colorado. And you have a lot of friends, directors, CEOs, business owners in California. You also know bankers and CPAs and attorneys who have connections in California. So I want to close by recommending that with what you learned today, all of you women and some men in the audience should be in touch with your California contacts and try to get on one of those 600 board seats that's going to be available before next year. Good luck, have a great day, and I look forward to staying in touch. Jolynn.
Thank you so much, Betsy. We really appreciate you taking time, and how fortuitous some of the things that are happening right now as we all come together to talk about this important event. As we get started, I'm hoping everyone can see my screen. As we get started today, before we really jump in, I want to take a moment to thank our sponsors. You saw them flashing, but I'm going to take a moment to call them out. Our global sponsors who actually are sponsoring the event in multiple cities around the world: BNY Mellon Wealth Management, Bank of America, RBC Wealth Management, EY, McKinsey & Company, and of course, Zoom. What would we all be doing without Zoom during this time that we're living in? I want to do an extra special shout out and thank you to our local sponsors, Advanced Energy and Whippen. Both Advanced Energy and Whippen were also sponsors last year, and we love the fact that they are so committed to this movement that they are joining us now for the second year in a row. Why are they doing it? Well, we all know diversity is important, right? That goes without saying. No one's questioning that. But today we're really coming here collectively as part of a global movement that really is focused on promoting women and diversity in the boardroom. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do. However, it's more than just that. There's some very tangible reasons that it's important to have women in the boardroom. First is women on boards are good business. When you've got at least 3 women on a board, there are statistics, there's analysis that show that the stock of those organizations outperforms the stock of organizations that do not have at least 3 women on their board. Second, there's all organizations have many stakeholders. They have customers, they have employees, they have investors, and they have shareholders. All of these groups bring a very diverse point of view and perspective. And so it's really important that a board matches that diversity with their stakeholders. And then finally, diversity promotes better ideas and better decision-making. Again, there's data that shows that when you add diversity, you don't have groupthink and you come up with better ideas, and organizations are able to do more and be more nimble. So with that, I'm going to jump in and start sharing some of our numbers. Oh. Okay. Oh, before I do that, sorry. Here's our agenda, how we're going to spend our time today. Betsy alluded to some of this already. We've already done our introductions. We're going to spend some time showing you some progress, both nationally and then really digging into Colorado. We are super excited about our keynote panel that we have today. You'll get to hear stories from them and hear insights from them that you'll be able to take away and kind of add to your own thinking as you think about your next step of your journey. Then you'll get to do interactive discussion with our director coaches and other people in a breakout session. I am going to remind people during the panel, feel free, actually we encourage you to submit questions via the chat, and we will get to as many questions as we can to give to our panel. And then finally, we adjourn at 6. I will say that if you are having a great discussion, there's no one's going to kick you off. Feel free to keep the discussion going as long as you like. And we want to make sure that everybody enjoys and gets what they want out of this. Now I'll go to sharing some numbers. Okay, Betsy mentioned this is a big year, 10th anniversary of 2020 Women on Boards, 100th anniversary of women's right to vote, and we did it. And for Colorado, this is our first year. We're very excited to be in here and having 20% in that 20% echelon. Let me explain. This is for the Russell 3000, and the way that this is calculated, it is all board seats across the Russell 3000 and what percentage of those seats are held by women. So you can see here on the top, you can see how we're doing globally, and then you can see the red shows Colorado at 20.4%. We have 591 board seats in Colorado, and today 121 of them are held by women. So we did it. Congratulations to all of us here. However, we can do better, and we know we can. I remember last year we talked about, Colorado is a leader in so many ways. And we believe that we can and should be a leader in this area. So as you listen today, we're doing a challenge, a call out to everyone here to do what you can to help move us into a leader position for Colorado. One other way we're going to share this, there's 25 states that have at least 20 Russell 3000 organizations. This year, 23 of those 25 states have hit the target of 20%. Again, Colorado is one of them. Shout out to us. We've got Utah and we've got Florida that hopefully will catch us all next year. But we're really proud of the progress that we've made and want to celebrate that. So with this, I'm going to actually ask Jolynn to share some more specifics around our Colorado numbers. Jolynn, you're on mute.
Thank you. Mimi's been sharing with you the percentage of all the board positions held by women. And now we're going to shift gears. Let's talk about, of all the Colorado companies that are on the Russell 3000, which there are 72, what percentage of them have at least 20% women on their boards? And it's about half. So that is great progress if we compare that to 2 years ago. But if you look at even further, we have many companies that are at 30%. So look at this list. When the Women's Leadership Foundation did our first study back in 2011, there was only one company that had 30% women on their boards, and now there are 21. So if you do business with, or you work for, or you invest in any of these companies, please take an opportunity to thank them for being leaders on gender board diversity. And we're especially excited that on this list are 2 of the companies that you're going to hear from the CEOs today, Dave Bonenhausen of Noodles & Company and Yuval Wasserman of Advanced Energy. Thanks. Paula, tell us though about the future and what our opportunity is for the future.
Thanks, Jolynn. I completely agree with you that we can help motivate companies to get women on board by speaking with our dollars, by purchasing and supporting those companies that that are diverse. And how do we get the next level to diversity, that the additional half of the companies in Colorado? It's about 49 board seats to get all of the companies to 20% diversity. If we think about, we want them to not just get to 20%, 20% isn't enough any longer. We really want to push that to gender equality or gender balance. And to get there, Mimi had mentioned that there's 591 seats. So that there's in essence 280 seats that we need to fill. And a lot of you in the audience, I see that there's 93 participants, almost 100 participants. So many of you are going to make a difference on these in these companies and in the boardroom. And so how many of the companies, this is a little sobering, because we have 50% that are at 20 and we have a nice 21 that are at 30%, and we only have one, according to this statistic. I'm happy to say that we've doubled that. We actually have two. So the one was Vail Resorts that has a balance, gender balance on their board, and Whiting Petroleum joined them, and it was after these stats were run. So we're making progress. With that, I am going to hand it over to Stephanie to talk about, kind of give us and remember she is our co-founder, to talk about where we came from and the vision for the future. Stephanie?
Thank you, Paula. And I want to do a big shout out and thank you to all of our sponsors, our co-chairs, our panelists, the leadership committee, director coaches, and especially all of you for participating in this event today. As you heard earlier from Betsy, this year we celebrate the 10th year of the 2020 Women on Boards campaign. Mally Giro and I started the campaign in 2010 because we were dismayed by the lack of progress women were making getting on boards. The percentage of women on the Russell 3000 boards was stagnant at around 10% and hadn't moved in the past decade. At that time, some people said our goal of getting 20% women on boards by 2020 was too bold. And others said it wasn't bold enough. But we're celebrating today because we achieved our goal in 2019 nationally and in 2020 here in Colorado. And as Melody Hobson said in the Global Conversation on November 12th, we're pleased but not satisfied. In 2021, the new campaign will advocate for gender balanced boards. This is another bold goal, but we've always been a bold organization. Our vision is for all public company boards to be gender balanced, with women holding half of all the corporate board seats. And with the completion of the first phase of the campaign, we are changing our name. And I'm pleased to announce that our new name will be 50/50 Women on Boards. Let's all give a virtual shout out and applause to the new name, 50/50 Women on Boards. Thank you all. It's great to be with you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And wow, this is very exciting, and it's going to create a ton of opportunity for all of us who have joined the conversation today. And on behalf of all of the Colorado co-chairs, we hope that today's event inspires you to take the time to invest in yourself. And specifically for those of you who are interested in board service, we want to continue to educate and advocate, because you all are the future of women on boards. So for those of you who are not quite ready for board service, but think it is in your future, starting in February of 2021, the Get On Board workshops will resume. And for those of you who are in your mid-careers and within 5 to 10 years of board service, there will also be a new offering next year called Path to the Boardroom. So we want to absolutely stay connected as a 2020 Women on Boards community and help support your journey. So to learn more about these educational workshops, events, and other happenings, please make sure to visit 2020wob.com. And now I am very excited to introduce our panel: Colleen Brown, Fran Vallejo, Dave Bonenhausen, and Yuval Wasserman. And with that, program over to Jolynn and Paula.
Oh, Paula, this is going to be so much fun talking to our CEOs and board directors.
I'm so excited. Jolynn and I had the opportunity to spend time with all of them and learn their backgrounds and their history. And so we're super excited to to share their journey with you all. And hopefully this will definitely, I know it, not hopefully, it will inspire you all.
So Paula and I are going to start with some questions, but we invite the audience to use your chat and to enter any questions that you have, and we'll get to them as we can. So as we start, I would like to ask each of our panelists just to say a few opening words. So Colleen, former CEO of Fisher Communications, board director of Big Five, Sporting Goods, and True Blue, many other boards. Say hello.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, Jolynn.
Good.
I started in Colorado, but spent the last decade in Seattle. So the Seattle folks know me probably better than the Colorado folks, but we're back. And I'm really loving the progress we're seeing at 2020 Women on Boards in Colorado.
Great. Thank you, Colleen. Yuval, CEO, president and board director of Advanced Energy. And you engineer some of the world's most advanced power supplies. So tell us about yourself and how you came to love board service.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. We are very proud to be a sponsor of Women on Board for the second year. And we're even more proud to be one of the leading companies in number of independent women board members. We have a third of our independent board members are women. I've been with the company for 14 years, moved to Colorado from the Bay Area, been in the high-tech industry for 36 years, and serve as the president and CEO of Advanced Energy for the last 6 years. It's great to be here. We really support your cause. We believe in diversity and inclusion. It's part of our mission. And we make significant effort as we move forward with this company to be a leader and an example to other companies.
Thanks so much, Yuval. Fran, you're a director of Cimarex. You've been on the board of trustees of the Colorado School of the Vine. Say hello.
Well, hi, everyone. It's great to be here. And you can see from my background, I love Colorado. I'm actually a native. I did graduate from Colorado School of Mines, and my career took me outside of Colorado for my entire working career in oil and gas. I started with Phillips Petroleum Company and ultimately ConocoPhillips before I retired. I'm super excited to be sort of stepping back into the Colorado landscape, and I really appreciate the invitation, Jolynn. Thank you. And thank you to all of the chair people and table coaches that are participating. This is a great effort. I was thrilled to participate in the Houston event as a table coach, and super excited to be with you here today.
Thanks, Fran. So Dave, CEO of Noodles and Company. And I understand that you've grown from one restaurant to over 450 today. And also that Denver Business Journal says you're one of the best places to work at Noodles and Company.
Yeah, we still have a ways to go, but couldn't be more excited, Jolynn, to be here today. A little intimidating be here. We're not oil and gas or energy. We're just simple mac and cheese makers and dishwashers, but couldn't have a more important topic to be talking about today. And I think we're on the cusp of something extremely special as a country, really, and as a business community. So excited to get us started, and let's get the panel going, Paula.
All right.
Well, thank
Sounds
you.
good.
So Colleen, the first question for you, because this is the 10th anniversary and you've been involved over that time frame. And you mentioned the time you spent in Seattle. We are quite excited that Washington is one of the top 3 states in the nation for the percentage of women on boards. So can you give us a little insight as to how that happened and any part you might have had?
Yes, well, thank you for that softball question. It's one of my passions that we were able to do some real good up in Seattle. As you know, Seattle and most of the technology-based cities tend to be a little more metrics driven. And so we decided, a bunch of us women who were fully boarded up, decided that we were gonna participate in diversifying boards to pursue gender equality. And this was 5 years ago, I believe, pretty clear, it was 5 years ago. And we started Women on Boards. And it was just our little effort to bring attention to it. And we figured we could use our relationships with CEOs. There were 2 others with me in this effort. Many of you know Leanne Pelletier was involved, and Deanna Oppenheimer, and Charlotte Guyman, who's on the board of Warren Buffett. Very, very full board slates, everybody, but we decided we'd use our full board slates as an excuse to get in and talk to CEOs, non-gov, and chairs, if you will, of the board, to convince them that they needed to think about putting a woman on the board. And I can't remember the exact specifics, but I think it was 1/3 of all of our boards did not have a woman on the board, which shocked us. And statistically, we were 200 basis points lower than the US norm. And we were a little full of ourselves, thinking we'd go from, good to great. We went from poor to just good. So we really had a lesson to learn, but we poured our relationships into it, got champions. Blake Nordstrom became a dear friend for his championing this cause, as well as many other men in the Seattle area. And statistically, we started moving the dime. And we measured it every year. We had a dinner every year that was underwritten by Deloitte was underwriting it, and Perkins Coie and Spencer Stewart. And we finally started making a dent. And it helped just to have those champions. We couldn't do it as women alone. It was so frustrating. But once we realized that we could bring in all these non-gov chairs, et cetera, it started to move. And yeah, so today they are one of the highest in Seattle. And I've long passed off my work in that area, although I speak there frequently, a couple times a year, on the importance of this and the importance of diversity. And the last thing I'm going to say is I did have the pleasure at the Aspen Institute to meet Ruth Bader Ginsburg in her answer when asked whether or not she thought it was fair to have 50% women and 50% men on the Supreme Court. And she says, well, I think 100% would be perfectly fine. And she got quite a laugh when she said that at the Aspen Institute. And I know she's repeated it several times since. I'm not advocating for that, but I think it was a kind of a good idea of her sense of humor and how we have to keep our sense of humor as we move through this.
Thank you, Colleen. And listen, we're hoping you can help us strategize here in Colorado. You noticed we're a little bit below the national average, and we think we should be a leader. So you and all the panelists can help us with the good ideas of how we can accomplish that.
Happy to do so.
So you've demonstrated that a company can move pretty fast. I think it was only 2.5 years ago when you had an all-male board, and now you have 3 women on your board. So what's the story?
Great question. So for the first 35 years of our company's life, we were almost like a single industry company. Most of our business came from the semiconductor equipment industry. And most of our board members were industry veterans and expert in the semiconductor industry. Over the last 6 years, we went on a strategy of growing and expanding our offering to new markets and new industry and new world regions. As a result of that, it became clear to us that we needed to add more capabilities, experience, and talent to our board. That was an opportunity to start a diversity journey, not only bring people from the industrial world or the data economy, but use that as a, if you may, Trojan horse to bring diversity. The board was almost like monochromatic, almost like a club. And it took us some effort to bring the first board member who came from GE. And she is just amazing. And very quickly, aligned with the board, really became a strong contributor, was not shy, coming from GE, how to deal with the male dominant society. So she was never shy to stand up and express her opinion, challenge the common, opinion, challenge the rest of the board, and also develop really strong, respectable relationship with the board members. Once we had that first success, the next was easier. And we decided about 6 months ago to add another woman to our board, someone that came from the data economy industry, someone that came from data center, networking, and telecom. It's an area that was new to us, and we needed more experience from that specific industry. So it was another opportunity to look for another woman board member. In the process, and we really look for people who can bring unique capabilities to our board, not only diversity, but also experience. In the process of interviewing candidates, we ended up with 2 finalists, and we could not decide who is better. So we hired both.
Wow.
And we decided to take the step and increase the board and overhire, so that for the future, if we go to the next step of refreshing our board or dealing with retirement, we have 1 additional board member that we can rely on. And it's exciting. Now we have 3 women on the board out of 9 board members. And it's a great experience, and you can see the board dynamics changes to the positive.
Wow. Well, I noticed you were an NACD board governance fellow. And so your story reminds me of using strategic skills and really thinking about how you can make your company stronger and using diversity to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I can tell you, really, we make better decisions. We have discussions with point of views that we never saw before.
Wow.
It's beyond just numbers and goals and objectives. Suddenly we have more discussions about the human aspect, about engagement, and about cultures. And that's fantastic, because I do believe that culture beats strategy every day.
Well, Yuval, we hope that your story is going to be an inspiration to many other CEOs to have the confidence to do that same thing.
Thank you.
So Paula, what questions do you have?
Before I move on to a question, it's interesting, Yuval, Stephanie just chatted that, that a lot of times in order for us to get more women representation, we have to add to boards. And that's one of the things. You have to have board turnover, or you have to add to boards to get the diversity. And it's great that you weren't afraid to add to your board. And I think there are a lot of smaller companies, we've got the Russell 3000, but Colorado has a lot of smaller companies, and, they have to add to boards to get women because they don't have as much turnover.
Absolutely. And it's a really good point. I think, especially now post-COVID-19, you are going to see a lot of board refreshing going on. Board need more experience in technology, in digital platforms, digital marketing, culture and strategy. And obviously, I believe that board's composition should reflect the composition of our stakeholders, of our customers, and of our future employees. And that's why it is so important to bring diversity into our board.
Yeah. Do the rest of the panelists sort of agree with that, just from your experience? I'd just love to hear what you guys think about that before I launch into more questions, because this is kind of it gets me going about composition.
I agree with you all. I think that in addition, I'd add global experience.
Great. Good. Well, Fran, you're next on the hot seat. Listening to your background and, your executive experience and how that translated into board experience, and graduating from Mines. And I'm in the financial industry and I've been in it for many years. And historically, it's been underrepresented by women in finance. And you're in sort of a similar industry. And so if you can speak to us about kind of how you translated that and how you navigated that, that would be great.
Sure. It's interesting because it would be wrong to say that I had a plan because I didn't have a plan. But you know, I love numbers, and I went to School of Mines and I became an engineer, and I started my career as a geophysical engineer doing oil and gas exploration. I'm proud to say I found some, which is not easy. Gulf of Mexico. And along the way, I got my MBA and I concentrated in finance. And so the majority of my career was actually spent in the finance homeroom. And specifically, I spent probably, I'm going to say 10 to 12 years in Treasury. I was treasurer for 6.5 years for ConocoPhillips. And then my jobs in between Treasury were related to strategy, planning, corporate development, mergers and acquisitions, and sort of anything related to, finance or strategy homeroom roles. So during that time, I was just sort of following, my passion for numbers, really. But along the way, I ended up getting some specific experience that, as it turns out, was very valuable in the boardroom, especially for an oil and gas company. And that is related to my financial expertise. I'm a financial expert after all those years I've spent in finance homeroom and roles, and my experience in mergers and acquisitions and integration and so on for transactions, including spinoffs and divestitures. So as it turns out, the work that I was doing positioned me for some of the skill sets that Cimarex in particular, headquartered here in Denver, was looking for. And the way I sort of made my way onto that board was just a little bit fortuitous. Through my career, I volunteered my time with various nonprofit organizations, all the way from my kids' school to United Way to the credit union for our company. And ultimately, I served for 6 years on the board of trustees for Colorado School of Mines. Well, I'll try to make the story short, but long story short, I served with the CEO of Cimarex on that board of trustees. And at the end of 2016, we were standing in a line to process up on stage for the commencement. And I told Tom I was retiring from full-time work, and his eyes got really big. And then we walked on stage. And after that, he called me. Little did I know that his board was searching for a new board member. And I quickly had interviews, and within a couple of months, I was on the proxy, and by May, elected to the board of directors for Cimarex. Now, it was right place, right time, making connections. I knew Tom from my work on the board of trustees. He knew me. I chaired the finance and audit committee for the board of trustees. So he knew what I was like in the boardroom. And, it's just one of those things you never know when the opportunity is going to arise. So be prepared. It can happen quickly, but also be prepared. It can take a while. I know that my experience and how quickly it happened for me is not normal, but it can happen. But also be patient and persistent.
I'm just, before I move to you, Dave, there's been a ton of chatter about network. How do you leverage your network to make this happen? And where do you find good board members, qualified board members? So I'm opening that up to the panel to say, to speak to that.
I might just, I'm off mute right now, just, say that, networking is so important, and get out there and meet people. Don't be a hermit. I think you need to get to know people in your business, in your communities. It could be connections through parents of your kids, the classmates of your kids. You just never know where it might come from, but just build those connections. And I think specifically, Colleen, I think I saw you write this in the chat. It's important to get to know board members, sitting board members, because those are the folks that are actually helping in the process of building the list of candidates, putting forth those people that they know and they've worked with. So I think, if you can find your way into meeting some of those folks, I think that's very important.
And
That's
I would
great.
just add, Francis,
Yeah.
that relationships, not just networking, but real relationships, because, these are sophisticated individuals who know when they're being hit up or used or whatever. So relationships matter.
Right.
I
If
agree
you
with that.
can find a mentor, this is so important. And it really help accelerating networking connections and provide good guidance. Find a mentor.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, moving on. That was great. So Dave, part of our conversation is managing through times of crisis. We've had a little bit of crisis and it's impacted restaurants in your industry for sure. So if you could give us some insight on how you guys have navigated it, because you've done a great job, you and your associates and your board, and how the board helped you get somewhat through it. We're still
Yeah, in this dumpster fire of a year, I think restaurants were clearly kind of in the center of the blast zone. So we saw, maybe not overnight, Paula, but in a very short order, the restaurant business just changed. The regulatory environment changed the entire way that you do business. We're fortunate, as you said, our sales have recovered back to last year's levels, but we overnight went to being down 50% in sales. And so you've never seen the importance of a board be more evident than what we saw, particularly during that late March, April timeframe, where you needed to make very high stake decisions very quick. And we were fortunate that we had a board that didn't just check in on a quarterly basis, but were very engaged, knew the business, knew our strategy, knew our strengths, knew how we could navigate through the pandemic. And they were absolutely critical in allowing us to not slow down the process, not add bureaucracy to some of those decisions that needed to be made quickly, but provide insight, provide kind of that look around the corner of the things that maybe we weren't thinking of as a management team. Really applaud our board for how they helped us through that. And the diversity aspect of it was particularly on display because this pandemic has hit absolutely every aspect of the business. Significant financial hurdles, operational, people, guests, you name it. We needed to be able to look at every aspect of every decision very quickly and narrow in on what the truth was and what the right decision was. And that the strength of our board really shined through during this pandemic. So it's been incredibly critical.
That's great.
That's great news, David. You've recovered as fast as you have, and I'm sure we're not through it yet.
No, not quite yet, but we're feeling better than we did certainly 6 months ago.
It's amazing how this forced companies and organizations to make faster decisions. Because I was speaking to one of your associates and they said, yeah, we were talking about, curbside delivery. And that was out into the future, and that happened overnight.
Restaurants are a very, very innovative industry, and we certainly became very quick. And there's the real balance that we've had. And I think our board has been very supportive in helping us strike the balance of first and foremost has to be safety and the well-being of your team. And so we made a lot of investments in our team through this whole pandemic. And at the same time, created initiatives and worked harder than we've ever worked. And finding that right balance between the business and the stakeholders, as well as the internal team and the guest, has really been so critical for recovery. I know one of the questions in there was where our recovery was. Public company, obviously, so we're stuck with our most recent announcement, but we're back to where our same-store sales are actually positive during the month of September versus looking versus last year. So significant improvement versus where we were.
That's great.
That's great.
Yay.
Well, another crisis this year has been when we witnessed all of the incidents for Black lives. And one of the things that was brought out during the series of tragic events is that a lot of companies began listening to their employees and making commitments to include Blacks in leadership. And Yuval, we were excited that one of your new directors was Lanesha Minix. And so she was an executive from Flowserve, but how has that been, bringing on a Black woman to the board at a time when that was such a critical issue for the country?
Very, very exciting. And you know, it wasn't something that we were looking for. It was, you know, by just sheer luck that we found someone such amazing in terms of skill set, personality, intelligence, and passion. And the one thing that that Lanesha brought with her is her passion towards social responsibility. And we immediately put her on our nomination, the Nom and Gov committee that is responsible for our ESG initiative. And she's becoming a champion for our ESG initiative on the board, bringing a lot of her experience driving similar programs in her company. So it was sheer luck, but already has been impactful, and she's helping our ESG team to look at best practices at benchmarks as we put together our programs going forward. So very excited. In reaction also to what happened and Black Lives Matter and the whole, you know, wave of consciousness that came in the country, we also put together a special program for scholarship for STEM education for minorities. And we announced it about a month ago. We're just trying to be a good citizen and do the right thing.
That's marvelous. Well, you know, the research shows that we need 2 to 2.5 as many African-American and Asian women on boards as we have today. So thank you for taking a step in the right direction for us. But friend, the statistics for Latinas say that we need 11 times more. So it's even a greater gap. And so we're very excited that you were one of those talented Latinas making a difference in a Colorado company. But what else should we be doing to bridge that gap?
You know, I did not know that statistic. And I guess I'm not surprised, because when I look in my industry and many other industries, I mean, I worked a lot with the financial industries in my career. You don't see too many of me. And so the statistic itself is very interesting and eye-opening. So what do we do about it? You know, it'd be nice to be able to just, you know, say to all corporations everywhere, you know, you need to be willing to listen and accept someone that's different from you. And it doesn't matter if we're talking about, you know, a Latina or a Black or whatever it is, right? It can be someone with a different experience and background within your same company. That's hard to do. But the reality is that there are those of us like me out there, very, you know, accomplished, getting good opportunities. I think we need to provide, you know, all the opportunities that we can to all employees, because you never know who's going to be that person that's actually, you know, has so much potential. They're going to, you know, find their way up the organization and make their way ultimately into the C-suite and onto boards. You know, people, I don't know if it's just me or if it's because I'm Hispanic or what, but, you know, I think differently than the people that I worked with. I communicate differently. I lead differently. I've had different experiences, but all those things are valuable. And, you know, when given the opportunities, we can build on our skill sets and be able to contribute at higher levels and be able to bring a different perspective to the table. And so I really just, to the extent we can have influence within our organizations, you know, provide opportunities for people, be open to listening to and accepting of different styles and different experiences, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to see more and more people of color and diverse backgrounds make their way up in the organization.
Yeah. Well, the Latino market is so large,
Growing.
2.6 trillion in 2018. That's bigger than Italy, Brazil, and South Korea if it was a separate a country. So I do think it was in business interest to be conscious of this. Any other of the panelists have any experience of how you've addressed the diversity in general, but Latina specifically?
Yeah, Jolynn, I'll jump in. True Blue is a board I serve on. We put about 1 million people to work through services across the world. And 5 years ago, the board then, which was predominantly men, white men, decided they were going to diversify. And I was their first female, not first female, I was their first in their diversification efforts. And I came on board, and afterward, and I was an addition to the board, by the way. I had them go up one just by adding me. And then they forgot that we were supposed to not fill the guy's seat who retired later on. So we got a little bit, but the point being that now today, it took 5 years, but today we have 2 African-Americans, we have a Japanese descent, we have 4 women, 5 men, and most importantly is every one of us, women, minority, there is no, every one of us chair the committees. So there's no committee not chaired by a diverse candidate. It just happened that way. But here's why I tell the story. They've begun to use us in a different way in management. And so us women will hold a session while we're there. It'll be usually a lunch and learn kind of thing, and talk with a handful of women who sign up, who want to meet with us. Same thing with the African-American contingent. They have done such good work. And the reason it's important to me is the feedback we're getting in those little micro surveys is how much they appreciate the board looking like them. And they're motivated by that. I was so excited to see that. So anyway, that just gives you goosebumps. Just realize what a difference you're making in modeling what they can eventually do that for themselves.
Yeah, if I can just give some of my perspective, Jolynn, I think that, we've seen some questions on how can people get on boards, how can they be most effective. I think getting to know the realities of a company and what are the constraints, how does that company truly function, that passion really makes a large difference. And I think the diversity, Black Lives Matter movement, all the social unrest that occurred during the last 6 months, restaurants in particular being as consumer oriented as we are, as well as having a very diverse workforce. We were fortunate that we had a board that very much knew our culture, knew our values. We use the word love a lot. We use the word caring a lot in our brand. And we specifically talk about, as much fun as it is to talk about the next menu innovation or unit growth, when it all comes down to it, it's that often high schooler that's working at the cash register. And the reality is for our general managers at a restaurant, they're having more impact on how these high schoolers view the world, view service, view respect for others, view how to just serve than almost anybody in their lives. Maybe a parent, hopefully, maybe a coach or teacher, but probably not. And so that tremendous role that these folks play is so critical. And as we went through this summer, we realized that we had a gap, not in that our culture is inclusive, our culture is caring, our culture cares about these things, but our general managers tend to be young. They tend to be in their upper 20s, many are in their lower 20s. And having these types of dialogues around such critical issues, they weren't necessarily prepared for. So, we talked through significantly with the board, here's our strategy to make sure we educate, because we're putting future leaders, and that's what Fran mentioned it, having people move up and be part of the pool that you can draw from a management perspective. It's critical that you educate them early on and get them moving along the ladder.
One of the questions that's been asked a number of times, which is sort of along that line, Dave, is could a prospective board, someone who wants to be on the board, contact a board member? What's the best way to do that? how do you find these board positions? Can we contact board members? It's kind of all wrapped up into that. How?
Yeah, I certainly would like to defer to the rest of the board. So the board I'm on is Noodles, so that's a little bit different, but I think you've all hit it right in terms of mentorship. I think that is a very critical component. And that does require kind of reaching out and having that relationship.
Right. I also, thanks, Dave. Also, I think it's really interesting to start small, right? Start with trade organizations, start with small private companies, even startup companies, and grow up to the next level of a bigger company, and then you end up at a public company. And the other thing is that the reason I talked about mentorship, at Advanced Energy, part of my job, in addition to succession planning and developing people, I've helped some of my executives, young, find board positions in other companies, right? Because it will round their experience. It will help them look at business from the other side of the table. Now they can become the advisor. They can become a person that help other CEOs, even though they're not CEOs. And we start slow. We start, at a trade organization, etc. And it's part of mentorship. Grow the next generation of board of director members. And obviously, part of that, you can also foster diversity.
Right.
Great. Well, thank you. I can't believe that our time has passed so quickly.
I know it.
We really, really appreciate all of your contributions. Does anyone have any burning last comments to share?
I would say, Lynn, I would just say regarding the mentor conversation, don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to find somebody you kind of click with. And I know I try to do a lot of this. It's just my passion. I don't get anything other than helping other, particularly women and diverse candidates, move up into the board seats. And, we all know our network of who is placing on boards, who is looking for female slates, we all have our network. So I'd really encourage us to be open and not be afraid to say, I want to know you better.
And what I know I've been monitoring all these questions, and then people are saying, gosh, it's gone too fast. And you guys have been amazing and so much information and probably so much more to have. So if you have questions, for sure in your breakout, take them to your directors in the breakout, and you can always email info@2020wob.com, and we can get you more information. They can get you more information. And gosh, I can't thank you guys enough for the great conversation and great information.
We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So we'll now invite our other co-host back.
So I will echo Paula to our panel, wow, what an amazing conversation. What great insights. I can listen to you all day. I think every year we say we need more time for the panel. I think we're learning. Next year we might have to do a 2-hour panel. So with that, I'm going to have, we're going to move to our next session. I'm going to ask Taylor to kind of set us up in terms of what's next, both in our journey and in our time together today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Mimi, and agreed. Thank you to our panel. What a great conversation. And as Paula mentioned, I would encourage you all to write down those questions because we are about to transition into our breakout rooms. And we want to make sure that you ask those questions during your breakout sessions. But first, let's quickly meet our director coaches who will lead the breakout sessions. And you are all in for a treat today because we have 12 director coaches leading these breakout rooms. They all have very diverse backgrounds and experiences serving on boards. And I want to truly thank these extraordinary individuals for being with us today. So now, just briefly, the purpose of these sessions are for you all to have an intimate and small group discussion with these director coaches about board service. And we understand that each of you are at a very different stage in your journey. Some of you have already gotten on your first board, some of you might be a few years away, and some of you might just be learning about this whole board experience for the first time today. And this is truly your chance to hear from the experts and get those questions answered. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you to stand up, grab a drink, and head over to your breakout session using the link that you received in the calendar invite that you should have gotten because you are on the call today. So after today's program, all of the Colorado co-chairs will be sending you a follow-up email that will include a resource guide. And you can also access more information about Colorado resources through the link that we have just put in the chat box. And if you have any technical issues as we move to the breakout rooms, please email events@2020wob.com. And with that, on behalf of all the Colorado co-chairs, I want to thank our panelists, our director coaches, and most of all of you for attending this evening. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. Once again, please remember to check your calendar invite for those breakout session links. And as Ruth Bader Ginsburg famously said, women belong in all places where decisions are being made. So on that note, let's head to our breakout rooms and have a great night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi, thank
Thanks.
you.